Sure, their supply chains are free of human rights violations and environmental issues, but negotiations in Brussels have hit a roadblock as countries rally to protect their own key industries. For more, let's talk to Deutsche Welle's Kassandra Sundt, who joins us now from Berlin. Hi, Kassandra. So tell us first, who's going to be protected by this law?
Well, the law is called the Corporate Sustainable Due Diligence Directive, or CSDDD, and it's incredibly ambitious. It's essentially trying to mandate businesses to identify and eliminate the negative effects of their activities across their entire supply chain. Think of a chocolate company that uses chocolate that was harvested by children or people forced to work against their will, or a construction company that uses timber from areas that were illegally deforested. Under this law, there's not supposed to be a don't ask, don't tell anymore, where companies can pretend that they didn't know what was going on down their supply chains. That's because if passed, directors of companies would now be required to consider, quote, human rights, climate change, and environmental consequences as part of their fiduciary duties. And if they don't, those companies could be open to civil liability.
And maybe unsurprisingly, given the scope of this law, there's been some pushback from leaders.
That's right. This is the fourth round of negotiations that have been going on this week. It was thought that this might be the end, but it's not looking that way so far. On Wednesday, EU ambassadors, some of them at least, started to swing behind a long-standing call by member state France to exempt its entire financial sector. Basically, France wants to shield its finance houses from complying with these burdens because it's still seeking to win new business following Brexit. Britain, after all, has an outsized financial sector, but left the EU a few years ago. As it stands right now, it seems that the financial sector might be added to these restrictions at a later date, but not in the first implementation round that's set to start in June. Critics say that more rules will just mean that financial institutions can't provide certain services to their customers, like insurance, for example, even if that insurance is legally required because of a due diligence assessment like the one we've been talking about. And proponents, though, for their part, they're really frustrated. They say that financial institutions should take responsibility for supply chain compliance in the projects they back. One sustainable finance think tank said that the new rules would be an important incentive, arguing that up to 80% of the destruction of natural resources and the majority of human rights violations are hidden somewhere in the supply chains of clients that are financed by these big institutions.
And Kassandra, what kind of businesses will face restrictions under this law?
To start, largely it's going to be big business. The proposed law is aimed at both large European firms and non-EU firms that are active within the 27-member bloc. And in order to be affected, the proposed law says a European company would have to have over 500 employees and 150 million euros worth of annual global revenues, while non-EU firms that generate at least 150 million euros within the bloc would also be affected. That's phase one. Eventually, it's being talked about that there would also be an expansion to include businesses with over 250 workers and revenue above 40 million euros. Proponents hope the law with the first phase will go into effect on June 1st. And even though there were many folks that were hoping that this week would be the final round of negotiations, I've been seeing some reports early today that there might be a fifth round of negotiations on the cards for December.
Well, Merry Christmas to you, to Deutsche Welle correspondent Kassandra Sundt. Thanks for the update. Let's check the weather now with Amy.